What's up everyone, OJ here, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the future of the Fire Emblem franchise and a follow-up to Fire Emblem Three Houses. So we're not going to be discussing Fire Emblem Echoes type of games or like a remake style. We're talking about what intelligent systems can do to improve upon the base formula of Fire Emblem Three Houses. So let's go ahead and start off with why I think there's going to be a follow-up here. If you go back to 2012/2013, Fire Emblem Awakening was released to huge sales and it reinvigorated the brand. They did a follow-up to that a couple years later with Fire Emblem Fates and had even more success with that game. So I do feel that that's how Nintendo and Intelligent Systems is going to progress with this one. Then maybe we'll get an Echoes game after that. But I wanted to talk about what they can do to improve upon the formula that was built with Three Houses, because I think that there was a formula there that you can go forward with and they can improve greatly upon. Now I'm going to go over three different aspects here, guys, with graphics, story content, and combat being last. So let's go ahead and first start off with graphics. So I do think that the character models in Three Houses are absolutely phenomenal, and you do have to take into consideration here that this is Intelligent Systems' first HD game, and for their first outing, I think that this is pretty good. The character models are clean and smooth. I think the game has a lot of great art in it. I think that it looks good. The Monastery looks good for the most part, but definitely some of the battle areas could look better, and I feel that that's where they're going to improve greatly whenever they do release the next one. Heck, even if it is an Echo style game or remake, I think they're going to improve the environments and the backgrounds a lot more because they're going to be working maybe with the same engine. I'm pretty sure they're going to work with that Koei Tecmo engine that they're using and just really improve upon it, or they're really just going to say, hey, we have our HD development down now, let's go in and nail down some of these other things that we didn't really have time to get to. And I think that graphics and some of the areas, some of the environments were kind of where it took a hit, some of the ground textures, stuff like that, they'll really spruce those things up now that they have more time and experience with the Nintendo Switch and with Fire Emblem being in HD, because it does take a little bit of time to get used to all the HD shaders and stuff that you can do going from the Nintendo 3DS to the Nintendo Switch. That is a huge jump and a big responsibility, and probably partly the reason why the game was delayed a couple of times outside of some of the story content and other things that they did want to add. So graphics are important, of course, and I think that they're going to improve them. They have a good basis to work with. The character models look really good. I think the facial animations could definitely improve. I know some of my users were talking about that, getting some better facial animations in there, but there's just so many characters, so we'll see what they do there. But overall, the presentation is still really good. It looks clean. I think the graphics were good enough for what they were doing and the size of the game, and they're only going to get better going forward here. Now let's go ahead and move into the next thing here, and that is story content and multiple paths. And this is going to be something that I think will be decisive with fans out there. Do you want to see them continue with, hey, you can take this path, or this path, or do you want to see them continue with what they did before, which is sometimes light decisions, but pretty much one story path that you can go to, and the main thing is making sure that all of your people survive. Three Houses was very unique because not only does it give you three unique paths to play, but then it also puts the burden on you on making sure that all of your people survive, and students be it that, but also fighting against the students and how you treated them if they join you or not. There's a lot of dynamic play into here that tugs on your emotions and everything, and I feel that they have a very good thing going with this multiple paths. So even if it's not a path that you pick or you align yourself with, I do think that there should be multiple paths in future new games that allow you to experience and see different things in order to give you big replay value, and that's what Fire Emblem does really well with the story. And they were able to capitalize on that with the marketing of the game, saying, what path are you going to choose? Are you going to be Black Eagles, Golden Deer, Blue Lions? All of that really just played into the marketing, played into the sales of the game, played into people picking their allegiance. And if you have those type of choices, which were really popular, by the way, in like the early 6th gen and all of that, and even with like stuff like Mass Effect where you can pick like the evil route or the good route and you see different things, that stuff has always been awesome for RPGs. And if they can continue that in unique unique and cool type of ways, I think that's the way in order to go with Fire Emblem. Like I said, not necessarily having it to where you're aligned with a certain path or house or kingdom or whatever the case is, but just having different paths to where there's replay value and you can experience different things and see different things and get different characters or equipment. That stuff is always good in games. Some of my favorite games have done that really well, like the original Fable, which necessarily not up to what Peter Molyneux said at the beginning, but they still had that there, in addition to stuff like Mass Effect as well. So I'm hoping that they go with the multiple paths type of storyline or multiple different options storyline where your decisions actually do matter and can greatly affect the outcome of what's going on in the game. So I've always been a fan of that, and I hope that they continue with it. Now, another thing with the story, with the storytelling and how they do things, the cutscenes, the cinematics, kind of the backgrounds with that, I do kind of, it seemed a little bit weird with some of like the blurriness of the backgrounds when they talked with Fire Emblem Three Houses. I think that they can do more of an in-game, actually on the battlefield with cutscenes and kind of seamlessly intertwine it. I think if you're going to an area, seamlessly intertwine what's going on, or even use a different style of art that they've used before in the past. That's the only thing that I think with the storytelling and how it was presented to you, maybe they could have changed up a little bit. I would have liked to see a little bit better with that, but I think that overall it was still good because the voice acting was top tier, which made the story even seem better. So I do think that they can continue with that, but just kind of change up how they integrate the storytelling with the backgrounds and what they do there. Now, the last part that we're going to move on to here, guys, is combat, and this is my favorite thing about Fire Emblem games, is the combat. If you're not playing a Fire Emblem game for the combat, well, that's okay. You can play it for whatever you want, but this is the reason why I play it. This is the reason why Fire Emblem is as heralded as it is because of the strategic combat that you have. You have a weapon system that is not really like anything else. They do have a light weapon triangle with the combat arts and what you can do with some of the skills that you can learn, but it's not like how it was before in previous games. So I think that how they did the combat in Three Houses is probably what you want to do going forward. I love the addition of combat arts. I think that combat arts are such a great addition to the game, and the flow and battling, being able to use those, have that little spark that comes out of you and body people with certain stuff is just very satisfying. I think the pacing of combat is something that they need to make sure that they keep an eye on, because the more story, the more elements, the more Monastery stuff, which we'll talk about in just a bit here more with combat slash gameplay. I should more talk about combat and gameplay with this last part here. That could potentially slow down the pacing of the game quite a bit. And I think that Fire Emblem, it has large scale turn-based battles where you select each one of your characters and say, hey, you go here and do this, you go here and do this. And on the harder difficulties, you have to be very careful. You have that added level of tension of losing your unit forever if you're playing on like classic, to where if your unit dies, they're gone for good. So that's the thing about this game, which can really slow down the pacing for some people, and I like that. I do like the fact that it's a very tactical game, and they should keep that pacing as well. There are some people that suggest maybe they make the battles smaller in scale, less people, but I don't think that's the way for the Fire Emblem franchise going forward. I think 10 to 13, 14 people on the battlefield that you can control at any time is a good number. Sometimes it's a little bit less than that. And I think that putting out more challenging enemies and what they did with the whole like beasts and everything like that, that was awesome. I love how they added that in. So all of that should return. The combat arts, the bigger enemies to where it takes some strategy, breaking their armor and everything, how they have certain abilities where buffs and debuffs, things like that are all great. It made the combat and it made the strategy in Fire Emblem the most engaging and the most fun in any of the franchise, in my opinion. So I do like that. Now let's talk a little bit more about some of the gameplay with Fire Emblem Three Houses, and as they should continue with that. I think that there's some great things with the Monastery and with the teaching, but at the same time, I do think that there should be ways that that can be kind of modified just a little bit, even if you're playing on the harder difficulties, because you can't really power level, right? You can't replay battles over and over on the harder difficulties. They make you basically just use your battle tokens or whatever you have, your free time to do battles, and what you get is what you get. Whereas if you're playing on normal, you can. But there should be some concessions, or there should be some type of different ways for people that are playing on the harder difficulty in order to get some extra practice in. So I'm not as big of a fan of the time limit stuff, right? Moving on the calendar, you only have this amount of time to do this, you can only do this many times, you can only create these many actions on this type of day. Like, I'm not as big of a fan of all of that. I like being able to manage your time and what you can do, but I just wasn't the biggest fan of that. So I'd like to see them kind of scrap that and actually put in to where you can do some more extra battles if you want to get some extra practice in or some extra experience even on the harder difficulties. I like to be able to see them put in more stuff in the Monastery that doesn't take up time or doesn't take up what you can do. So more mini games or more stuff that you can do to where it doesn't really have that, okay, I'm always using something up, okay, I'm always doing this, it's always taking away one from me here or there, right? So that's the thing that I like to see with the game, and however they can balance it out to where it makes it to where you're not like overpowered or something like that, they should do. But I'm just not as big on the whole calendar moving and always having to be worried about time, and if you rest or if you do this, it uses up your time or it uses up what you can do. So we'll see going forward what they do with that. It's not something that I hated in the game. I still loved Fire Emblem Three Houses. I still gave it a great and glowing review. I felt that it was fantastic. It's a phenomenal game, but those are just some of the things I think they can do for the next game in order to improve upon the formula of what they've built, the great formula of Fire Emblem Three Houses. So what are you guys' thoughts on what they can do for Fire Emblem, and what do you guys think about what I had to say here? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go ahead and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for this RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.